question, but I think I know the answer already because we were all just singing about it together and we were all feeling it together. And the question was, do you believe in miracles? I hear some yeses. I bet sometimes there's some doubts, even among the most faithful of us. We talked about miracles with the kids this morning at the traditional service. Some of you were here. Some of you weren't here, right? Some of you weren't here. Who wasn't here this morning? Okay, good. Because I brought some of this with me. Do you know what this is? Some people do, some people don't. Bubbles. Do you know what it says on the bubble bottle? Miracle bubbles. Miracle bubbles. And I actually think there's a reason that these are called miracle bubbles. Because how do these work? Tell me how they work. You see a miracle here? What do I have to do? Well, I don't know if that's the smartest thing in the world, actually. So, maybe, but there's something I got to do. What do I have to do? Open them. Thank you. Open them. Take a wand out. Okay, before I take a wand out. Oh, okay. Yes. Because miracles are a little messy. Thank you. Miracles can be a little messy. Take the wand out. Okay. And blow. Thank you. And isn't it kind of like you watched? Remember when you were a kid? And you watched until they disappeared? And then if you wanted them to reappear out of nowhere, what do you have to do? Dip the wand in and gently. It's good advice. Good advice. One more time. One more time. See what I can do. See what I can do here. Finding the lid afterwards is always is also good. So the thing is, do you know? I'm gonna. You might know this already, but I'm gonna. The word for breath, that blow, that thing that lets me make that miracle bubble. In Hebrew, that word is ruach, and in Greek, that word is pneuma, like pneumatology, pneumonia, and in Latin, that word is spiritus. Spiritus, pneuma. Ruach, pneuma, spiritus, all words that mean breath and spirit. They mean the same thing. So when God breathed life into Adam and created the first human being, he gave his ruach to Adam. So I loved it in the prayer when Reverend Davis was getting us quiet for the prayer and we all just got centered and quiet and still. I could feel my breath, that spirit moving through my body, which is, whoa, what happened there? Another little miracle happening. Which is a miracle, right? Just that we're alive, and with our breath, we can change the world. We can change our own worlds. We can change the world around us. So with the kids, we agreed on this definition of a miracle, that a miracle is what seems to be impossible, yet it's real. So if I just think about the fact that you all grew inside your mother's bodies, and then you were born, and then here you are, I mean, whoo, that's a miracle. And we talked about what it takes to make a miracle. It's a little messy, and it takes our life's breath. It takes our spirit. It doesn't just happen, presto abracadabra. We have to put ourselves in. And we agreed that each and every one of us is absolutely, totally a miracle, whether we feel it or not. And Pastor Smith just helped us feel it with that beautiful meditation with music about the mind and the body and the blood and our bones and our nerves and our spirit and this miraculous thing that's how did we show up here in this flesh, this amazing combination of mind, body, and spirit. So you know that. And that's beautiful. And hopefully you're feeling it a little bit right now, because this morning we're going to move a little bit. We're going to experiment with this gap that for me exists, and I'm thinking for some of you it exists too. Because even if I know, and maybe in moments of prayer, communion, or transcendence, I can really know that I'm a miracle, a lot of the time, I don't feel like I'm much of a miracle at all. Okay, I'm not the only one, right? Okay, Thank you. More like a mess up than a miracle. So there's this gap between what is real and what we feel. You with me? Yeah. Sometimes it can be a really big gap and a really painful place to be, and we're in it. I'm in it a lot of the time. I know some of you are in it. People call me when they're in it a lot of the time here at church. So the good news this morning, and I really believe this, is that God is in the gap. So God is in that gap. So if I had to rename this message this morning, that's what I would rename it. I think I am renaming it right now. You with me? So God is in the gap. So when Pastor Smith was doing that meditation, it's like we were standing right here in the gap. We came in with all our feelings and our troubles and our worries. But then when we do that thing, when our sorrows, our burdens, we remember that God loves us. Somehow it comes together and we reconnect with that spirit and that life force. And we know again, we remember again that we're a miracle with a gift to give and share with this world. So there's different ways to connect with that spirit or breath. One way, we've done a lot of them this morning already together. One way for me that matters is to remember everything that we have in common so that we don't feel so alone when we're suffering or when we're in despair. So I did a little reading and a little studying, and I think you'll all agree we all experience these same 6 basic emotions: happiness, sadness, surprise, disgust, contempt, and anger. All of you? All 6? Okay, I'm going to go a little more. Psychologists actually start to disagree or argue when you get to below those top 6. We have a psychologist right over there. He'll correct you, okay? But I think that we all experience these also: pride and pleasure and shame and satisfaction and jealousy. I know, gotta take a deep breath. And guilt and excitement and embarrassment and relief. It's a lot of feelings. We're feeling all the time, so what is real is not always what we feel. And I found Dr. Phil, believe it or not, had a really good list of things that we all have in common, and I chose 4 because I liked them, 4 to share with you. The number 1 fear among all people is rejection, he says. And the number 1 need among all people is for acceptance. So none of us want to be rejected. We all want to be accepted. Everybody, he says, and I think it's true, approaches every situation with at least a little bit of concern for what's in it for me. You can call that enlightened self-interest. If anybody asks you or tells you you're being selfish, you can say, no, that's enlightened self-interest. It could come in handy. And see, I think that one landed. People hear and incorporate only what they understand, which means that when you laughed, you understood that. You're like, okay, file that away in the permanent memory banks. And then there are the facts behind where we started, that we're a miracle. And what Pastor Smith was saying about, doctors, scientists, they don't really understand everything. And actually, for me, the facts, the biology, the chemistry, and the physics of who we are, the facts are miraculous, right? You can understand, take apart matter, and then if you read, and actually I've heard Bishop talk about this, right? They end up with this dark matter, that there's more of dark matter than actual matter, and they can't see it, and there's string theory. The more they dig into what is and what actually makes us what we are and how it's all energy, it just becomes more mysterious, more mystical, more magical, more unknowable. The facts are miraculous. We all have bodies which are beautiful and broken. Our bodies are all literally recycled and will be recycled. We are literally, again, made of the same elements as our planet and the plants. We're made out of the same recycled elements from the stars, the same things that make the starfish. We all are breathing the same air right now. We all need food and water to survive. We all need to love and be loved, not just to thrive, but just to survive. One of my favorites, we were all born of a woman. we're all going to die. We're all going to lose someone we love before we die. We have all of that in common. And still, we fight and we struggle. We can't quite get along the way we want to. There's a gap between how we want to get along and how we really get along. Yes? You with me? With all that in common across cultures and classes and conditions, we struggle to be at peace that you were singing about, Pastor Smith, that peace in our hearts that we want, that peace in our homes that we want, that peace in our cities, and that peace in our world that we want. And we struggle. And I've wondered, I think really all my life, why seeing and believing and being a miracle isn't enough to bring us peace. So I'm going to tell you a story that's helped me figure out what it means to live in the gap between what is this beautiful reality we touch here when we're in worship together and what we feel, right? And what's real and what we feel. And it's a story that happened a long time ago when I was in high school. It happened with my best friend at the time, my friend Jan. We had met when we were really little, like 4th grade. Actually, we met at recess on the swing sets in 4th grade. And we went to school together for the next 9 years, super close, did tons of stuff together. We had this crazy haunted house every Halloween. We'd do this like pasta intestines and jello eyeballs. Do you remember that? And we'd charge a little admission and then we'd give the money away to some good cause. She was a great friend. I really don't remember fighting with her that much. I'm sure we got on each other's nerves until this day, senior year in high school, and we started arguing. Really arguing about the causes of alcoholism on Native American reservations in the United States of America. I know. Wow. It's a little ridiculous, except I had just written a paper about it, is why we were arguing about that. And I remember because we were alone in the classroom and we were standing face to face. And, like, I had studied, I had all these numbers and facts and things I thought were facts. And she disagreed. And she was like, well, no, I don't think that's why. And it started getting faster, and more intense and louder and more frustrated. And you kind of wait and you're like getting more and more angry, and we're sort of backing away from each other because we're uncomfortable, more and more uncomfortable. Like, what's going on, right? Like, what's going on? Why can't we see eye to eye, and why aren't we agreeing? So we ended up like in a face-off, ran out of words, didn't know what to do next, and then I slapped her for real. So my mom and I like to say that we'd be saints, that's because my mom was raised Catholic, that we'd be saints if it just weren't for all the people we have to deal with every day. You get it? Right, wouldn't we all be saints if it just weren't for those gosh darn people at home and at work and everywhere else who disagree with us, whatever, that we have to deal with. Yeah. So they say, this is really interesting, I think. They say that if you stare at somebody for 4 minutes or longer, you're either going to want to kiss them or hit them. 4 minutes or longer, anybody, you're going to want to slap them or kiss them. Which to me means that we are kind of irresistibly drawn towards each other and pushed away from each other at the same time. Where every day we're living in this gap between wanting to live in love and not quite making it, and kind of wavering between falling in love and wondering when God's going to show up and show us the way, right? And wanting, we're actually thinking, who cares? I end up feeling, who cares if I'm a miracle, if I can't keep my marriage together, or I can't hold on to this friendship, or my kids can't stand being with me, right? The tension in the gap between what we want our lives to be and what our lives actually feels like sometimes can pull us apart in really, really uncomfortable ways. Right? Okay, so I got to give you a little good news. Actually, this is a little good news, but it's a little challenging too. So it's another story to help me figure out why it's that way. Like, if God is always with me, why does it feel so bad sometimes, right? So this story comes from another Barbara. Her name is Barbara Brown Taylor. If you don't know her, you might want to look her up. She's an amazing writer, theologian. She's an Episcopal priest. I see some of you know her. So she tells this story about being on a church retreat. And so they're like, you imagine us and we're in a circle or something, we're in a room, and the question that they open the retreat with is, how has Christ shown up in your life? And people start telling stories, and they talk about like a tried and true friend, a friend who just, wouldn't give up when you were going through rehab, and that friend was just there for you through thick and thin, even when your family gave up on you, maybe, right? And then somebody else, a woman in the circle, says, I had this friend who, when I was super, super depressed, right, that friend just wouldn't give up on me. That friend knocked on the door and kept coming up to visit. I was so ashamed of what I was feeling, and that friend just wouldn't give up, right? And helped me break through that shame, and I actually went and got help. And one story after another was about how Christ showed up as love, as care, as compassion, as concern, and really helped people get through really, really tough times in their lives. Until they got to this one woman in the circle, and she said, if I'm going to tell the truth about how Christ showed up in my life, it's when somebody told me the truth so clearly that I wanted to kill them for it. Right, and the people did just what you did, like, what? And she said, yes, when Christ showed up in my life, it was because somebody told me the truth so clearly that I wanted to kill them for it. So then I started thinking, in this gap place, when stuff feels horrible, what if it's not some ethereal, wonderful, always warm feeling, everlasting arm feeling, though those everlasting arms are there, but what if it doesn't always feel that way? And sometimes God shows up in our life and it feels really bad because there's a truth, we have a blind spot. There's something we can't see. We're in our own way, right? We're not believing who we really are. So it's that friend, or it's that family member, or it's that colleague, that person who tells you something that's really uncomfortable, but that has the power to transform you, to shift you if you let it. If you can open yourself up to the love that's there for you and supports you, sometimes love shows up in the gap in ways that we don't anticipate and we don't really want, or we think we don't want. Yes? Yes. Okay, so then, you're on a little trip with me today. Do you see this? Then I looked at the scriptures, and I looked at Luke, and I brought my Bible with me, but the print in this Bible is so small, you're going to have to forgive me if I use my phone, because they tell me all the big preachers these days are doing it. So it's in Luke chapter 4, when Jesus goes home for the first time. It's actually, he's just come out of the wilderness where he's been tested, and he's passed the tests, so he's filled with the Spirit, and he comes home, and I think we all know that gap when we come home. Do you know that gap when you come home and they think they know who you still are, and you're like, no. No, look at me right here, right now. This is somebody new. And then before you know it, you're like acting like that person that they remembered that you swore you were never going to be again, right? There's a gap between who we're becoming and who we were, and then we need people in our lives who know the new us, right? So they're not, sometimes family is the hardest to be around, right? Conflict doesn't just happen with people who don't know us well. It happens most often with people we do know really, really well, right? And it hurts the most because we want them to love us and understand us and accept us and see who we really are. So it's fascinating. So Jesus goes back. He goes back. It's Luke chapter 4. I mean, everything went really well at the beginning. Went really well at the beginning. Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread through the whole countryside. He was teaching in their synagogues, and everyone praised him. Even though some people didn't recognize him, which I think is interesting. Some people said, is this Joseph's son? They're a little confused about who he was, so he must have been different, but they kind of put it together. They sort of like made some picture in the gap that made sense. Okay, this is Joseph's son, and he's teaching like this, and oh yeah, he's that one we've heard has been doing those miracles. Maybe he'll do some miracles for us. And they're like, do some miracles for us. They like ask him. They sort of demand that they do some healing work with them. But instead of doing the healing work with them, he actually tells them some stories about when the prophet Elijah came back to Jerusalem. And even though the people in Jerusalem had been suffering and they were hungry and there had been a drought and they really needed sustenance, they really needed God's support, instead, God helped the widow from the wrong side of the tracks. That's why they call her the widow from Zarephath. And then Elijah, the prophet, helped Naaman the Syrian, who again is not the person you would think would be helped, because he was actually an officer of the army of Israel's enemies. Do you see? So Elijah didn't help the people who thought, Elijah belonged to them and they belonged to him. It's as if Jesus came here to All Souls and said, hey, I'm not just here to work on you, I'm here to work miracles in Donald Trump's life too. Like he needs it. Or I'm actually going to pass over All Souls and all the people at All Souls, and I'm going to take care of the needs of the religiously exclusive right wing in Tulsa. That's what I have to do today. How would that feel? How does that feel? Not right. Ruth's shaking her heads. The thing is, he wasn't telling the people anything new. He was just reminding them that everybody, what do we say every Sunday morning? Everybody is included in God's love, even the people we're in conflict with. Even the people, there's a big gap between us and we cannot see it their way. We want to slap them in their face. We can't see it their way. Even those people God loves, because God can't see the walls that we build up that divide us into these people and those people over there and my people and your people. But the people in Galilee were so upset. Jesus fell so far, so fast, that they tried literally to kill him. Do you remember this part? All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard those stories. They got up, they drove him out of town and took him to the brow of the hill on which the town was built in order to throw him off the cliff. They couldn't bear the gap between how they thought he should show up in their lives and the way he did. We all have to bear that gap between the way we want God or Jesus or Christ or love to show up in our lives and the way it actually does. Because it's there. It's there. There's just a difference between what's real and what we feel. So I'm going to ask you to consider for a second who in your life has told you the truth so clearly, like my friend Jan, that you wanted to kill them. And could that person be God showing up in your life right now? Just consider it today and this week. Could that person be God showing up in your life right now? Because the more I thought about it, I see some people who are having a few arguments, making eyes at each other right now. It's okay. Like you can check each other out. Actually, I was going to do that in a minute, but check each other out. But just don't stare at each other too long, right? Under 4 minutes. It makes so much sense, though, right? Because love doesn't just protect us, love pushes us. Yes. Think about your experiences of love, right? Love doesn't just comfort and console us, love confronts us. Love doesn't just support us, it stretches us. It stretches us. So sometimes when we're in that really hard gap place, consciously or unconsciously, we're going to try to kill God, it sounds weird, but we're going to kill. We kind of wreck the love that we have in our lives, right? Because we think we want some other kind of love, or we want it to come to us in some other form. So we actually don't accept the love that's right here, right now, available to us. All of which is why I love this church so much, Reverend Davis, because you got to hear this. A younger couple in a newcomers class this summer told me that they were thinking of joining the church because they wanted to see for themselves how a congregation with people on opposite ends of just about every political and religious issue could gather together Sundays and Wednesdays and Tuesdays and Thursdays without killing each other. And I thought, you are so smart. And you've come to the right place, right? Because some people say they come here because they'll find like-minded souls, and you do. You will find like-minded souls, but you dig below the surface of any two people. I don't care if you grew up in the same town. And my friend Jan and I, we have more in common than everything I said at the beginning. We grew up in the same town. We were both girls. We were both youngest girls. But still, we ended up in with that kind of a gap between us. You're going to meet people here who are not like you. And you're going to get to recognize God in the gap between you. So I do want you to turn to somebody behind you, near you, somebody you're in a fight with or somebody you're not in a fight with, somebody you know or don't know, and say, I recognize God in the gap between us. Can you do that? The thing is, some people think we all believe alike, but we don't. So even just here, I've heard people say, doesn't everyone at All Souls oppose capital punishment because we're all universalists? Right, say that louder. No! That's right. And doesn't everyone believe in global warming? No. And doesn't everyone believe in God? No. Right. We have a lot in common, so sometimes our differences, if we dare step into the gap with each other, are going to surprise us. But it's okay, because what do differences create? What would you say? What do differences create? Friendship sometimes. What else do differences create? Okay, don't just... Interest. Conflict. Right, all you guys on the sunny side. Let's get some realists. All you guys on the sunny side. What? Distance. Thank you. All of those things, right? I say, what? You might learn something from someone, but it's hard, right? It's not easy. It wasn't easy to learn anything from my friend Jan in that moment. So the point is, it's up to us what our differences create, right? Breakdowns or breakthroughs, opportunities, upset, greater understanding. That's up to us. And there's a tool. This is why I brought this whiteboard, because there's a tool I want to show you. It's helped me a lot understand, actually, just like in this last week, figure out why I got so out of control upset with my friend. So on one level, when we're in conflict, when we're feeling that gap between us and somebody else, there's a material level, right? We were arguing about the causes of addiction, what causes alcoholism, the history of genocide in this country. I mean, you can argue about facts all day long, right? And you can get different studies and different statistics. So on one level, that's what we were arguing about. But then on a deeper level, what I call the symbolic, this is not me, I did not make up this tool, but on this deeper level, we were arguing about our values, right? And the meaning and purpose of our lives, and what it means to be connected to people who are different than we are, and what does it mean to care, and what stories are we telling ourselves and each other, right? And what difference is that going to make in our lives? And then at the deepest level, called the relational, we were talking about our friendship and our love. And what I realized is that we were about to graduate from high school, and we were going to go in different directions, and I was terrified, right? Terrified that if we believed different things and we were taking different positions, that maybe the love that was binding us together wasn't going to hold, that maybe I was going to lose this friend. All of a sudden the gap seemed so big because we couldn't see eye to eye anymore, and that hurt so much. And I think really I didn't know any other way to connect across that chasm except for it's crazy, but sometimes when we feel violent, that's what we're actually trying to do. We're actually trying to connect with somebody that feels so far away we don't know how to re-engage them. You know, when you're like raising your voice or like yelling louder and louder, like that's going to make the person listen to you. So not advocating yelling or hitting, but I'm saying that I've come to understand my fear of losing her love is what was freaking me out in the moment and led me to strike out. And I saw that our conflicts conceal what we really care about, right? If you stay arguing out here, you're not going to get to this, right? They conceal what we really care about unless we're willing to do this work of digging into the gap, into the difference, into the disagreements to find out why our hearts are really hurting. It takes a lot of work and a lot of skill, but I totally believe that that's where God shows up. That's where love shows up. And I have a last story to tell you, which I think in your moments of doubt will help you remember to believe. So it's a story about another member, and she knows I'm going to tell you this story. It's her baby actually was dying. You might have met Elle. I don't know if you've met Elle yet. She's only been coming the last couple months here to the church, but she's really coming now because of this thing that happened a few years ago. Her baby was dying. And somebody in the church knew about Spirit Song, our special hospice singing choir, and asked me if we could go and sing for her. And I said yes. And so Elle was telling the story a couple weeks ago because we were talking about how amazing it is to be part of this diverse community of people and how much we learn because of our differences. I still do think, though, because you tend to be polite and on your best behavior at church, that we stay kind of at a superficial level. We don't really engage in the deeper conflicts because it's kind of easy not to go there when you're just together for an hour or two at a time. So I do think this year is about us daring to dig deeper and really get to those inner levels of meaning so we can really experience the love that is always there, even though when we can't feel it in the gap. So we were talking about how great it is to be in this community. And she said what it meant to her to have these people that she didn't even know. She said none of the churches in her neighborhood, nobody else showed up. It's just too uncomfortable. A 10-month-old baby dying, what do you say? What do you do? And then there we were. We came in and we do what we always do. We stood around his crib, and her mom was there, and she had a little daughter and her husband. And we sang, and we don't usually stay longer than half an hour. And I always say we try to get ourselves out of the way so that God can be present, right? I try to bridge that gap between what's real and what I feel, right? Between how I'm being and how I'm doing, right, by getting out of my own way. So just try to be present and let God's light and love shine through us. And we sang and we left. And he died a few days later. And she was telling the story and started crying because she was so grateful. And she said, and that's why I'm here. And I'm so excited to be here. And I think my husband is considering coming next week, but now her husband has come too. So, and the thing is, when I listened to her, all of a sudden I had this huge aha. Because what Elle didn't know is that was a really hard thing for us and for me. What Elle didn't know is that there were big gaps in our group that day. We were struggling. We were arguing with each other. We were arguing about stupid stuff, like which songs we should sing and which order we should sing the songs in and how we should put the music in our binders and like the stuff that we argue about, right? Like the most ridiculous stuff and what word we were going to sing in this part of the song. We were so much in our own way that I did not feel in sync. I felt a huge gap. I felt a huge gap between me and my God self, my higher self, and a gap between me and the other singers. So much so that it was hard to go in, really, not just because there was a baby dying, but because I'm like, we are not together, right? We don't have it together. But we did. We went in and we showed up. We stepped right into the gap and we quieted our minds best we could. And we used our breath, ruach, pneuma, spiritus, and we sang, and God showed up. Love beyond belief showed up, which is now a deep source of faith for me, because it means that it's not all on me, right? It's not all on you. It's not on us. We can be tearing each other apart. And if we just stand still and let it happen, that love is right there. It's the ground beneath our feet. It's the air above our heads. It's the breath that we breathe in and out. It's right there, if we just let it. Yes? Yes. So, here we are, church, Reverend Davis. It takes guts to step into that gap. And it takes skill, and it takes awareness, and it takes slowing down to breathe. Sometimes it takes praying. It takes all that, but it's worth it. It is worth it. I've got one more thing to tell you. Can you listen to one more thing? You ready to ride back up the hill with me? The thing is, in this church, this is why I love this church, is we come together not despite our differences, but because of our differences, right? That's what you were trying to tell me. I just didn't want you to go there that fast, right? Because the thing is, we're from everywhere, the South, the North, and the West, and the East, and we're vegan, and we're vegetarian, and we're omnivorous, and we're lactose intolerant. And we're libertarians, and we're independents, and we're Republicans, and we're Democrats. And even though we spend a lot of time hiding all those things we are, and we love jazz and classical and rock and rap and hillbilly and hip hop and more, and we're rich and we're poor and we're upper class and we're middle class, and we're Christians and we're atheists and we're spiritual but not religious, and we're really complicated, and we're humanists and we're Unitarians and we're Universalists and we're Buddhists. Because the truth is, we need each other, because we can't see the whole thing without all those perspectives, right? And all those voices, and it's not always going to be comfortable. I tell people when they join this church, like, I'm so glad you're inspired, but let me tell you, it's going to be hard work. Ms. Nicole Ogundari, she told me that 5 years ago when I came here. She said, you watch out, you wait and see. It all looks good and shiny, but when you really dig in, when you really dig in, it's going to get tough. You're going to get angry, and somebody's not going to understand you, and you're not going to know what to do. And you're going to want to do probably horrible things. But if you just stand there and bear the gap, bear the difference, open your heart and your eyes and your ears and let love in, sometimes you might want to kill people for it. But most of the time you're going to say thank you. You're going to say thank you, and you're going to be saved over and over again in the strangest ways in this congregation, and you're going to be changed over and over again in the wildest ways in this congregation, because love shows up again and again in the gap. If we dare to use our breath, step into the gap, and make miracles happen. Are you with me? Yeah. Okay, so I need a little music or something. Because when you leave today, there are going to be little bottles of bubbles for you to take with you, okay? And I want you to remember, not just that you're a miracle, but you can make miracles in the world every day, each and every day, and that they're messy, they're dangerous sometimes. The things that divide us are scary, but if we just bear the difference between what's real and what we feel, and we come back again and again and again and again into that right in the middle of the gap where love is. Let's see if this miracle is going to happen right here or not. Uh-oh, maybe not. Yeah, I need a little help. You ready? Okay, so I need some shh. Woo! One more, I'm gonna do one more. Miracles are hard work, I'm telling you. God was tired. All those miracles. Okay, here we go, one more, last one. Woo! I don't like this. Okay. I love y'all. Let's go and make miracles.
I want you to know I sing because I'm happy. Sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, I'm so glad. That's the reason why I sing.
Thanks for tuning in online. We are so pleased with all the different people who have been tuning in from all over the country and all over the world to our ministry and what we're doing at All Souls here in Tulsa. If you have a chance to send me an email or connect with me in some way, let me know what you're finding, why you tune in, and what you're getting out of it. I would love to hear from you. I'm always pleased when I get messages from different people who tell me all kinds of things about the impact of All Souls Tulsa's ministry on them and their lives and their families. And if you get a chance to make a gift to support this ministry, to become a partner, we would love to partner with you and have you be a friend of the church and somebody who is actually supporting us to create this congregation and the world that we're trying to create together. You can be a part of it, and every gift of every amount makes a difference. We really appreciate your support.